So one of the nice things, when we kind of look out, kind of from here, is just to see that all the kids get swapped. It's like I've now no idea which kid belongs to which family. I mean, I can give it a good guess, but now let me sit down for a little while. When you get to my age, you've got to sit down a little bit. I'm sure most of you will kind of know that we are working through this series, Driving Through Fog, because there's those times in life when we seem to be surrounded by fog and we can't see where we're going or we can't see how to get out of it. And it might be there's all sorts of reasons that we've landed in this metaphorical fog. I mean, relationship breakdowns, financial woes, medical issues, all those sorts of things. Just thinking about that this morning, and weather related. Anybody see the Northern Lights on Friday night? Oh, well done, Eddie. Only Eddie, is that right? Nice. Nobody else. I mean, kind of like once in a lifetime or twice in a lifetime, and right over Chantry. No, it's like now, everybody's like, if it's beyond 11 o'clock, forget it. I'm not stopping up for anything. I'll show you the pictures later if you didn't see them. Anyway, back to the fog. There definitely wasn't fog on Friday night. It was a beautiful, clear night, a very kind of almost cut your fingers on the moon kind of night. It's that sort of place. But back to fog. I've driven through fog many times in my life, and I guarantee that one of the things I always do when I drive through fog is it's really ineffective. If you're a driver, you've probably done the same thing. I've no doubt this started probably the very first time that I hit fog in the car, and I haven't yet fully learned the truth of this tactic. As you're driving along through fog, either fog slowly rolls in, or sometimes you hit that blackness of fog straight away. You know, you hit that really thick patch of fog. It comes out of nowhere, and fog brings with it a couple of things. One, it makes everything a bit colder and a bit damper, which is not really a problem if you sat in a metal box. That's not too bad. But then two, obviously, fog makes everything less clear than it previously was. And there can be this intense pressure to improve our sight. Now, in normal circumstances, very often at night when I go to bed, I forget to take my library book with me. I like to kind of read a chapter before I'm dozing off. And so I get in bed, I think, I've forgotten my library book again, have to get up. The house, apart from the bedroom, is in complete darkness. And so I go downstairs, and to improve my vision, what do? Yes, I don't put my night vision goggles on. I get downstairs, I reach round the corner. Rather than going around the corner because I'm kind of thinking there might be somebody in the room in the darkness. So I reach round the corner and switch the light on, and hey presto, the light dispels the darkness and improves my vision. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows that we see better with light. Light gives sight. So I'm driving along. I hit this patch of fog. I'm struggling to see, and of course, I turn the headlights on full beam. Anybody else do the same thing? I turn the headlights on full beam. At once, my vision is changed. Unfortunately, not in the way that I would like it to be changed. If you've ever done this, the full beam kind of shines directly into the precipitation causing the fog, reflecting the bright light back to me. I'm faced with this wall of glare, making visibility even worse. Suddenly, driving in the fog becomes more intense and the pressure can be virtually unbearable. First time I hit fog, probably as a newly qualified driver, I did this, hit the fog, put the lights on, still can't see, put full beam on, realized that was a mistake. But I reckon I still do this every time I drive into fog. I still try it. One day, it's going to work. But not yet. Every time I do it, I get the same results. I know what's going to happen, yet my behavior hasn't changed. I just think that once it might be different, and it never is. And I find myself stuck with less vision rather than more. We can treat life in general like this. When the pressure's on, when we're struggling to see ahead, the temptation is to try and make things brighter. Maybe to work harder, to take more control, to earn more money. And yet those things rarely work. And maybe the answer, rather than kind of reaching automatically without a thought for the bright lights, maybe the answer is to slow down and just take a step back. Just maybe sometimes it's okay to deliberately take 3 steps back to move 2 steps forward. But to take a step back, you have to be really intentional. And our 4th principle in this series is the intentionality principle. To get through this fog, we have to personally grow. And it's okay to go backwards to grow, as long as we are intentional about it. We have to be really intentional if we are to grow ourselves. Just a little aside while we're on this. Others can help you grow, absolutely, but others can't do it for you. So me and Nigel and our guest speakers, we can sit here or stand here week after week. We can give out some good advice, maybe, some tips, sometimes something helpful, but we can't grow you. Only you can grow you. I've said it plenty of times before, like I can stand here and speak for maybe half an hour. That's 30 minutes out of the week. How many minutes are there in a week? It's about 10,000, I think. So 30 minutes out of 10,000 it's less than 1%. It's less than 1% of your week. Might help you a little bit, but you're going to have to use the rest of your own time if you really want to grow. If personal growth is critical to your life, I want to start by really asking you a question. How intentional are you in your own growth, in your own development? How intentional are you in that? Brian Zare, in the book that we're kind of using to help us with this series, says, the answer to that question, how intentional are you, is the difference maker in dealing with the intensity and the full beam glare of moving forward when we can't see where you're going. I'm going to leave you to ponder that quote for a little moment as we look at probably a familiar story out the New Testament. It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up after the meal. He got up from the meal, took his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet, drying them with a towel that was wrapped around him. I've got some water and a towel and a bowl in the back. Put your hands up if you're happy to make a queue for me to wash your feet. Oh, I've got a few. I know most people will be like, you ain't not going anywhere near my feet. I know somebody who's very, very close to me in life who would be like, that's the worst thing I could think of. Jesus says, I'm going to wash your feet. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? Jesus replied, you don't realize now what I'm doing, but later you will understand. No, said Peter, you shall never wash my feet. That wasn't because of like us. He'd be like, you're not looking at my feet. Peter wasn't like that. Jesus answered, unless I wash you, you have no part with me. Then, Lord, Simon Peter replied, and we love Simon Peter. He gets it wrong so many times, but maybe at the time it didn't feel like it. Then, Lord, Simon Peter replied, not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well. You got the whole hog. Jesus answered, those who have had a bath need only to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean, and you are clean, though not every one of you. For he knew who was going to betray him, and that was why he said not everyone was clean. When he'd finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. Do you understand what I've done for you? He asked them. You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that's what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you should wash one another's feet. I've set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. Jesus takes off his coat, wraps a towel around his waist, puts water into a basin, and cleans feet. I think this is intentionality modeled by Jesus. We look at this often and we say this is an example of serving others. But the process and the outcome of this ceremonial foot washing is an intentional move towards intimacy. The simple act demonstrates maturity with the intent of putting other people first, resulting in a depth of relationship. This can only be done by someone who has nothing to prove, nothing to lose, and nothing to hide. Jesus didn't have anything to prove. He knew who he was, the Son of God. And when you know who you are, you don't have to prove anything to anyone. Jesus had nothing to hide. Everything had been given under his authority, and everything would become known. He could let his whole life be seen. And Jesus had nothing to lose. He knew that what you gain in this world, you lose. And what you give away in this life comes back for eternity. When we find ourselves driving through this metaphorical fog, there's this great opportunity to intentionally live a more intimate life. But for many, driving through fog will see us trying to prove ourselves, trying to make sure we're seen in a certain way and hiding our true selves. For many of us, it will be that opportunity to go, I can cope. I can do this by myself. All I need is my full beam headlights. I can do it. Towards the end of chapter 13 of John, Jesus says these really familiar words. He says, a new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. We can only effectively do this if we intentionally set out to create a meaningful connection between us and God and other people, as it says on these walls. Love God, love people. Then we get to love life. We need that intimacy, both with God and others at all times, but maybe most especially when we're in a fog. We need to thrive as humans, and intimacy helps us with that, and it doesn't happen by accident. It requires intentionality and a plan for growth. So I want to very quickly run through those 3 things we looked at, see whether they might help us develop an intentional plan for growth and maturity. First one was nothing to prove. I think this is really difficult because most of us feel like we have something to prove. I've been here at Greenfinch now for, anybody got a clue how long? I was going to say since 9 o'clock, but fair enough. I've been here, I think, 17 years, almost to the day now, which is a long, old time. Over the years, I mean, if you keep this to yourselves, but over the years, I have suffered with imposter syndrome. Do you know what imposter syndrome is? You kind of feel like you're not yourself. It's a bit of an act. You're kind of getting by just winging it. Just like today, I kind of feel like, you know, from time to time, that imposter syndrome. How did I end up here? I shouldn't be here. And so when that happens, I have to try and prove my worth, even if it's just to myself. Nobody else has ever felt like that, have they? Now I'm feeling awful because nobody else has been in that position. That's okay. Trouble is, trying to prove yourself is really hard work. When you have nothing to prove, it leads to authenticity. You can be who you are. Can I just say to every one of us, you have nothing to prove. Your authentic self is the self that the world needs, even when you're driving through fog. The truth of the matter is that when you intentionally don't try to simply look good, but be yourself instead, you experience a deep freedom. So, where are you trying to prove yourself in life? Who are you trying to prove yourself to? A boss? A friend? A spouse? The rest of the church? What would it look like for you to stop proving and instead live authentically? That's nothing to prove. Secondly, nothing to hide. Many of us will know the experience of having something to hide, whether it's big or small, and just bending ourselves all out of shape to keep that thing hidden. I mean, it might be a character trait, it might be a sin, it might be something from the past, it might be a thought process. Think about it. I could have come here this morning and said, when I drive through fog, when I hit that really bad fog, I know jolly well not to turn on the full beam because that would be crazy. Only a fool would do that more than once. I could say that. And the trouble with that sort of thing, I mean, this is like a bit of a nothing example, but the trouble with that sort of thing is that it has the tendency to snowball. Someone comes up to me after the service, as you no doubt will, and says, "Oh, well done. Well done for the full main beam thing. I've kind of not mastered that quite yet. You are an inspiration to me." As you do. And then I've got to go along with the lie, and I worry about keeping it up. And I wonder whether the elders are going to pull me to one side and say, "We've been with you in the car in the fog. That isn't true. You put your full beam in. Now go and repent in front of the whole church. And make sure your repentance statement is on YouTube as well." When you have nothing to hide, it leads to transparency. Transparency is a gift in our world that is full of fashioning and trying to make ourselves look better. It's a bit of an experiment. So we kind of did the Northern Lights thing, and I'm not sure anybody saw the Northern Lights. One, sorry, Eddie. Who watched Eurovision Song Contest last night? We've got one who's being truthful with nothing to hide. I know you all sat up till like midnight watching it. If you watched it, you will know so many people full of fashioning, trying to make themselves look something that they weren't. Much of what is posted on social media. Right, here we go. One Northern Lighter, one Eurovision Song Contest. I honestly don't know what you guys do of an evening. Anybody on Facebook? Anybody on Facebook? 4, 5. TikTok. Keep your hands up if you're also... No, keep your hands up if you're on Facebook. Let's do this. Put your hands up if you're on TikTok but not Facebook. So keep your hands up if you're still on Facebooking. Or, what's the other one? Snapchat. I'm that touch. I really am. Anything else? It's a good job there's no younger ones in here. Facebook, Snapchat not so much, TikTok, it's all about making the poster, the person posting, trying to look better. It's trying to look different to what they really are. The trouble is that if we go for the transparency option, that can be fear-inducing. What will people do when they see us for who we really are? But here's the thing. Allowing people to see what's happening in our lives, especially during times of crises, allows us to be seen and known and belong. So what are you trying to hide in your life? What would it look like to be transparent and let go of the weight of your secrets? We often don't realize the weight of the burden until we stop holding them. And I kind of know somebody who is quite good at helping us release our burdens. Didn't Jesus say something like, "Come to me, all you who are burdened and heavy laden"? He says his burden is light. Sounds really good. I love the way the Message puts Jesus' words in Matthew 11. He says, "Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly." In order to live intentionally, chasing intimacy with God and people, transparency is required. And then thirdly and finally, nothing to lose. When you have nothing to lose, it leads to vulnerability. The trouble is, I think most of us in the West live with a scarcity mindset. We worry about what we will accumulate, what we will lose, how we will survive, even though we live in abundance, even though we are the richest people on the planet. The only way to truly gain abundance is to have an abundance mindset no matter what your circumstances are. To paraphrase the Apostle Paul, I've learned how to be content when I have zilch, nothing. What are you worrying about losing? A job? A reputation? Maybe it's true that what we worry about losing is a key indicator of what we love the most. If letting go of what we had would help us through the fog and ultimately lead us into deeper intimacy with God and other people, would we let go? Is it possible to let go and still have an abundance? A couple of weeks ago, Jan decided she wanted to buy a treadmill. Which is great, you know, bit of exercise. I'm not a problem with that. She was looking at buying a new one. I may have put her off a bit with my reaction at the price. How much exactly? She kind of switched to looking for a second-hand one, and she found a couple on Facebook Marketplace. After some toing and froing, she arranged to go and see this treadmill, price £50. Seemed reasonable. It was a reasonable treadmill. We couldn't get there straight away because we had something else to do first. And in doing this other thing, Jan was talking to someone and she said, oh, we're going to have to leave a bit early because we're going to look at this treadmill. The person she was talking to said, hang on a minute, let me just talk to my wife because we have a treadmill and I'm sure you can have it. Long story short, we got this really good treadmill. Jan asked, how much do you want for it? I've kind of tried to teach her over the years, ask that question before you get anything rather than after because it becomes a little embarrassing. Jan said, how much do you want for it? Nothing. Oh, come on, this is a really good treadmill. You must want something. You could get £100 for it if you sold it. No, nothing. The guy said, in fact, you know what? I don't think we have ever sold anything. We tend to just give things away. I think that is an amazing Christian attitude. We just give things away. It's the kind of attitude that reflects Jesus and leads us into a deeper relationship with God. If any of you have got anything you don't want, not really. I don't want all your old time. Okay. This might be a really obvious statement, and it is, but if that guy didn't have the treadmill in the first place, he wouldn't be able to give it away. No matter how much you want to care for others or to make an impact with your life, to walk with others through the fog even, you can't give away what you don't have. We have to be intentional about growing in our habits and in developing deep, intimate relationships. If not, we'll find ourselves with great intent, but with nothing to give when the time comes. Intentionality requires a commitment to obtaining the habits and traits that can be given for a greater impact than we could ever imagine. Intentionality leads to impact, leads to intimacy, which leads to impact. Let me pray. Father, I just want to thank you for the way you've kind of led me to think about this and the way it's kind of led me to think about my life. And I pray that this might help others too. Help us to understand that as Christ followers, as those who put our trust in you, that we have nothing to prove, that we have nothing to hide. You know it all anyway. And that actually we have nothing to lose. And with those ideas in our heads, help us to be more intentional about growing closer to you and closer to other people. And that as an outcome of that, actually we might be better positioned to help others and to help ourselves even when we find ourselves in those times of foggy weather where we can't see the way ahead. Help us with that, I pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Fabulous. For those who are following along,